Leonard, let's start with a two-part question. First, what did you learn from Stephen Hawking about communicating complex science to civilians, to non-experts? And second, and related to the first part, what tips do you have for communicators in any field who need to make complex ideas or products understandable and accessible?
Well, first of all, don't underestimate your audience. So I think the worst thing you can do is talk down to the audience. You have to assume that the people are reading your book or listening to your talk because they're interested in the subject, and you have to assume that they're intelligent. So you don't want to use a lot of jargon or technical ideas that they don't understand because they haven't been exposed to, but you also don't want to oversimplify things. So it's a bit of a balance there. But I think one reason that Stephen approached me to write with him is that he liked the fact that I'm a storyteller, and when I write my science books, I incorporate stories, and I also incorporate humor. You mentioned that I wrote for Star Trek. I also wrote for some comedies back in the day, like Night Court. Remember that?
That's right. Yes.
So I used to have a sense of humor, right? And that's not like I put jokes in, but I try to write with a light touch and a sense of humor, and something that might be amusing, at least, that'll keep the reader's interest. So you really want, whatever the science is. One thing that I think I learned from Stephen is that no matter how technical the science seems, you can make it relatable to the audience. When I write my psychology, neuroscience books, that's pretty easy because I'm writing about who you are, your mind, how you work, what you think about. But what Stephen showed was that even when you're writing about cosmology in the beginning of the universe, that can be made, that's relatable, and people really do pick it up for that reason. Why do you think people are interested in that? Unless they're physicists, they're interested because they want to know what their place is in the universe. How did we get here? Why is the universe that we live in the way it is? And so when you're writing about that, you don't have to put equations in and write in a purely technical manner. You can tell stories. We use historical stories. We speak philosophically, speak about the ideas and what they mean for us. So that's one thing that Stephen really was a pioneer in, and I'm following that tradition.
Do you have any thoughts or suggestions on how communicators should make things more concise and accessible?
Well, it's really important. It's important to get the key ideas across and not to waste time on things that are not important or not valuable. That's hard to do when you first write a talk or write a book. So that leads into the next step, which we call editing. And there's something that writers say, which is that first drafts are shitty, right? And you have to rewrite over and over again to really get it good. And that's true of talks, I think, as well. So just get your ideas down and then look at it after you have some time, some space, and look at it critically. When you first write, you're not supposed to look at it very critically, or you'll block all your good ideas. So write out your speech, your talk, give it a little time, go back to it and look at it critically, and ask yourself, if I had to, let's say you write it for a magazine, you get a certain word limit. I have to make it this long. What would you take out? That idea in your mind that you have to do it will help you find things to take out that you might otherwise be too close to. Because we get married to our words, don't we? I have a file that I call cuts. And I found that rather than just cutting something and deleting it, I feel better about it if I'm not doing that. I just move it to the cuts file with the idea that I can always move it back, which I never do. But it makes it easier for me to kill my little ideas that I was so in love with.
It seems to me that in order to connect with non-experts in a field and to help people understand the types of ideas that you write about, storytelling is a powerful technique.
Oh, definitely. People love stories, and it pulls you along when you read a story. So it's not like your reading takes any effort. It's just something you're experiencing. And I think you remember the content better when there's a story behind it, rather than just having facts presented to you. So when I write a book, like for instance, emotional, I have all the ideas and I organize them, and I have the points I want to make. And then I start looking for how can I illustrate the points with a story. It can be Well, it can be something historical. It can be something humorous, something personal from my life. I look for incidents or stories that are memorable, that I can tell that illustrate that exact point. And that's where a lot of my work comes in, because it takes a long time to find some of the things, some of the stories that I told that illustrate the points. But I search, I scour journals, the internet, talking to people, of course, my own personal experiences, and until I find something that's really, which I think is really compelling.
What role does writing play in a science career, whether it's physics or outside of physics? Do you think that writing is an important skill for people to cultivate,
I
or
think
is it underestimated?
I think that virtually every scientist you ask would say that the writing and being able to get your ideas across is one of the key skills that you have. You have to have good ideas and do research that is interesting to people, but if you can't communicate it, you're not going to get it across. You know, these days there's a huge abundance of research, far more than ever before, and it's growing. The number of papers is growing, and scientists is growing exponentially. It's just ballooning, and it's very hard to keep up. I get a digest of papers in my field every day by email, and then there's a list. I can read the abstracts and see what their papers are about, and there's like 25, 35 every day. And it's just, you know, so it's almost like the person goes into a bookstore and looking at the shelves and what makes your novel or your nonfiction book stand out. And if they flip through a few pages, what attracts them? It has to be really good writing. Wherever they open the book to, it's got to be good. And that's the same in physics papers today, because we have so many papers to look at, that the ones that are clear and written in a way where there's a development, and it's almost really, it is story-like, that people can understand, and that draws them in, is a great advantage to having people look at your work. So now, many decades ago, it was a little bit less like that because there wasn't so much work. And if you're a super genius and people do get to know you one way or another, they will dig through your work no matter how bad it is. I mean, there are famous physicists who were known for writing horribly incomprehensible papers, and yet they were so brilliant that people would take days and work through those papers. But those people are a handful a century. For most physicists, even for most really great physicists, it's important that you can write and express your ideas clearly, and I think with some sort of story-like development behind them.